My name is Lisa. I'm 23 years old, and a few months ago I became the first person in my family to graduate from college. That should have been the happiest day of my life. I'd spent 4 years fighting through exhaustion, 2 jobs, and a mountain of student loans to get to that stage. I pictured the moment in my head 100 times, my parents in the crowd, proud smiles, maybe even a cheer when they called my name. What I got instead was silence. There were hundreds of people gathered that day. Parents holding handmade signs, little siblings waving plastic graduation caps, grandparents with walkers determined to see the moment. I scanned every row again and again, hoping maybe they were late, hoping maybe they'd sneak in just before my turn. They didn't. When my name echoed through the speakers, it felt unreal. Lisa Morgan, Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, summa cum laude. I stepped forward, smiled for the camera like I'd rehearsed, and heard the scattered claps of strangers. It wasn't until I sat back down that I felt a tight ache in my chest I couldn't swallow down. I pulled out my phone more from habit than hope and saw the notification almost instantly. A new photo was tagged by my mother. I clicked it without thinking. It was our kitchen. The counter was filled with beer coolers and wings bowls of chips and a big screen TV glowing in the background. The caption read, "Super Bowl prep in full swing. Love our crew." I stared at the screen, barely breathing. The timestamp said it all. It was posted at 12:03 p.m. I had walked across the stage at 12:02. While I was stepping into the moment I had worked toward for years, my mother was arranging nachos for people who barely remembered my name. There's no way to describe what that felt like unless you've lived it. The way your stomach twists when you realize the people who are supposed to show up for you never really do. The way your voice catches in your throat, not because you're about to cry, but because it feels like someone punched the air out of you. I stood outside the venue after the ceremony with my diploma folder clutched in both hands. Other students were wrapped in hugs, posing for pictures, getting flowers and balloons. I stood in heels that pinched and tried to look like I was just waiting for someone in the bathroom. A professor I barely knew walked past and nodded. That was it. That nod was more acknowledgement than I'd gotten from my own parents that day. The worst part wasn't that they didn't come. It was that they didn't even lie about why. They didn't pretend someone got sick or that there was traffic. They just said there was a party. They'd made buffalo dip. The neighbors were counting on them. And apparently, I wasn't worth the drive. I grew up in a small, sun-faded house on the edge of a working-class neighborhood in Ohio. My parents worked hard jobs that drained them. My dad was a mechanic who spent more hours under cars than inside the house, and my mom cleaned homes, always coming back smelling like bleach and worn-out carpet. School wasn't something we talked about much. It was just a place you went so the government wouldn't knock on your door. My parents never asked about my grades, never helped with homework, and never showed up for parent-teacher conferences unless the school threatened to report them. From as early as I can remember, I loved learning. I taught myself to read before kindergarten using old cereal boxes and TV captions. I used to sit in the hallway light with a library book long after bedtime, one ear tuned to the sound of footsteps so I could hide it under the blanket if anyone came close. When I made the honor roll in the 2nd grade, I taped the certificate to the fridge with Scotch tape and waited for someone to say something. No one did. The next morning it was gone, replaced by a grocery list written on the back of a fast food receipt. In 5th grade, I won first place at the science fair with a project on renewable energy. I stayed up 3 nights cutting pieces of cardboard and wiring a tiny windmill using parts from a broken toy fan. The day of the award ceremony, I stood alone next to my project as other kids ran to hug their moms and dads. My dad had taken a nap that ran long. My mom said traffic stressed her out. Every time I got a certificate or trophy, it would quietly disappear from the living room within days. I'd find them stuffed into drawers or used to level wobbly furniture. I learned to stop showing them. I just kept collecting them like secret proof that I mattered at least to someone. When I talked about college, my mom rolled her eyes and asked who would do the laundry when I left. My dad said smart people usually end up stuck with student debt and no real skills. He told me a good job was one that paid cash and let you clock out at 5. Sometimes I'd do my homework on the kitchen counter while my mom blasted game shows from the living room. She'd yell over the TV, telling me to clean up the dishes or fold the laundry before I wasted time on that school crap. If I stayed up late studying, they'd complain I was making too much noise flipping notebook pages. Once in middle school, I got invited to join a district-wide academic competition. My teacher said it could lead to scholarships if I stuck with it. I brought home the permission slip hopeful for once. My mom skimmed it and tossed it aside. She asked who was supposed to cook dinner if I had to stay late every week. In high school, I worked part-time at a diner after class. Not because they needed me to, but because I knew they'd never give me money for anything beyond basics. I bought my own school supplies, saved up for college application fees, and lied about needing money for lunch, when really it was to print essays at the public library. They never came to my high school graduation. Said the gym was too crowded. Said they already knew I passed, so what was the point? I remember standing on the bleachers in my gown, looking at the empty chairs in the section I'd saved for them. I told myself they just didn't understand that they came from a different world. But part of me knew the truth. They didn't want to understand. They didn't see value in anything they couldn't measure in bills paid or chores done. I grew up believing that wanting more was selfish, that chasing dreams was for people on TV. But I chased anyway, not because I was brave, because the alternative was staying in that house forever, watching my life dissolve into missed chances and resentment. There was never a moment when they sat me down and said they were proud. No warm speech. No teary goodbyes when I left for school. Just a reminder not to forget the spare key or to turn off the heat when I move out. Everything I built in the gaps between their neglect. Every grade, every application, every moment of hope, I held it in quiet like a secret I had to protect. Because deep down, I knew that if I waited for them to care, I'd be waiting forever. College hit like a storm I had seen coming, but still wasn't prepared for. I arrived on campus with 2 suitcases, a used laptop, and a stomach full of worry. My parents dropped me off without stepping out of the car, just a wave, and a reminder to not waste money on school hoodies. From the first week, I knew I couldn't afford to just be a student. I picked up a job at the campus coffee shop 20 hours a week to start eventually stretching to 30. Classes filled my mornings, shifts filled my afternoons and evenings, and the library saw me most nights until past midnight. Sleep became a luxury I budgeted like groceries. I ate leftover pastries from work and learned how to make instant noodles stretch into something that resembled dinner. There were nights I sat alone in the laundry room with a textbook on my knees, flipping pages while the machines hummed around me. At first, I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't have time for clubs or movie nights or even lunch with classmates. I remember one girl asking if I hated people. I laughed and said I was just on a mission, which was easier than explaining I didn't know how to relax. Then I met Marissa. She lived 2 doors down and knocked one night because my light was still on at 2 a.m. I expected her to complain, but she brought cookies and said finals sucked. We didn't become instant best friends, but she showed up. Sometimes that's more than enough. Through her, I met others. A study group formed, slowly, students like me holding down jobs, stretching every dollar, dreaming in spite of it all. There was Andre, who memorized chemistry notes on his bus rides. Tina, who could break down calculus with a whiteboard and colored pens. And Noah, who made spreadsheets for everything, even our group snack rotations. They got it. They didn't ask why I skipped campus events or why I couldn't go home for Thanksgiving. They left sticky notes on my desk during midterms, saved me a muffin when I was late, and shared textbooks without asking. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was faking my way through it alone. I also had Professor Hart, who taught Intro to Social Theory. She called me out gently one morning when I turned in a paper late, then asked if I needed help with time management. I thought she was judging me. Instead, she helped me apply for a departmental grant that covered part of my books for the semester. Bit by bit, I stopped holding my breath every time I walked into a room. I started to believe that maybe I did belong here, that I wasn't just surviving college, I was earning it, shaping it, owning it. No one from my family ever visited. They didn't ask what I was learning or how I was doing, unless it involved money. But these people, these classmates and mentors, they showed up in small, quiet ways that added up to something I hadn't had before support. It didn't come in grand gestures. It came in rides to campus when my bike chain snapped, in shared printers and homemade soup, and the simple question, "You okay?" whispered between midterm essays. Those were the moments that made all the difference. They reminded me that family isn't just those who share your last name. Sometimes it's who shows up when you've fallen behind, who saves a seat, even when you're not sure you'll come. They helped me keep going even on days when I wasn't sure why I was doing this anymore. And slowly I started to believe I was building something better. Not just a future, a foundation. Graduation was supposed to be the moment everything came full circle. I'd made it through 4 relentless years, and the end was finally in sight. I sent the announcement to my parents 3 months ahead, printed on thick paper with silver lettering and a purple Northwestern crest embossed at the top. They said they were proud. My mom even sounded excited at first, asked about the schedule, and told me they'd already requested time off work. That night I booked a modest hotel near campus and paid the fee up front using a credit card I was trying not to max out. It felt like a gift to myself, like proof that maybe this time would be different. Every Sunday after that, I called home with updates. I'd tell them how I was practicing walking in heels, how I found a good restaurant for after the ceremony. They laughed in the right places and said they couldn't wait. I believed them. 6 weeks before graduation, I got a text from Mom during my lunch break. "Call me later, something came up." I tried not to let my mind spiral, told myself it was probably nothing. That night, she answered on the second ring, sounding distracted. She started by saying the Andersons were hosting their annual Super Bowl party and had already asked them to bring the 7-layer dip. I waited, unsure why she was telling me this. Then came the line that made my chest clench. She said it might be tricky for them to make it to graduation if the party ran long. I reminded her that the ceremony was at noon. The game wouldn't start until after 6. She hesitated, then said traffic might be bad and it was a long drive. She didn't want to rush. Plus, the pre-party started early, and missing the commercials always bummed Dad out. My mouth went dry. I asked her again, clearly this time, if they were planning to come at all. She sighed like I was being unreasonable, said they'd try to do both, said not to get worked up, that it was just one ceremony. After that call, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the carpet. I felt something hollow open up inside me. I tried to convince myself that she didn't mean it, that she'd come through in the end. But deep down, I knew the pattern. This was just the build-up before the letdown. In the weeks that followed, their responses to my check-in texts got shorter. One-word answers. Delayed replies. I told myself they were busy. I told myself not to expect too much. I still kept the hotel reservation and still paid to have their tickets printed in a decorative holder. I even bought a third just in case my younger cousin decided to tag along. 2 weeks out, I asked again. Mom said Dad's back was acting up and driving long distances hurt. She added that I shouldn't be upset if things didn't work out. I said I wasn't upset. I lied. The night before the ceremony at 10:37 p.m., my phone rang. Mom's voice was bright in that too cheerful way that always meant bad news. She said Dad was sore, that she hated driving alone, that the party meant a lot to their neighbors. They couldn't come. I asked if they were sure. She said it was just a graduation, that they were proud of me. Maybe I could record it for them or see if the school sold DVDs. After I hung up, I sat in the dark, clutching my phone like it had betrayed me. The room felt too quiet, too still, like it knew something had ended even if I hadn't admitted it yet. I didn't cry. Not then. I just laid out my dress, packed my purse, and set my alarm. Some part of me still wanted to believe tomorrow could feel like enough. Even without them, graduation morning started with sunlight cutting through the blinds. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out of restless thoughts. My alarm buzzed at 7, and I got up quietly like I didn't want to wake something already broken. I made toast I couldn't eat, smeared it with jelly out of habit more than hunger. My dress was hanging on the closet door, ironed and ready, the cap and gown laid out beside it like armor. I moved through the motions, brushing my hair, putting on light makeup, pinning the cap in place, checking everything twice. The apartment felt painfully quiet. My phone sat on the counter, no missed calls, no texts. I left one last voicemail for both of them. Told them what time the ceremony started. Told them I'd saved their seats. Told them I hoped they would come. Walking to the quad felt surreal. The campus had been transformed into a celebration, with rows of white folding chairs stretching out under purple banners. Families were already pouring in, holding flowers, signs, and cameras. Laughter rose in waves, contagious and bright. I kept glancing around, scanning for my mom's haircut or my dad's favorite baseball cap. Nothing. I clutched the ticket holder in my hand like a lifeline, the one with their names printed inside. It was still warm from my palm. Lily found me first. She ran up with her parents in tow, all of them smiling, handing me a graduation lei made of white flowers. Her mom hugged me and said they were proud that Lily talked about me all the time. I smiled back, grateful, but it didn't stop the ache. Nothing could. We lined up in alphabetical order, the final moments before the walk. I stood behind a girl named Sarah, who kept adjusting her tassel and bouncing nervously. I just stood still, trying to breathe through the lump in my throat. Then my phone buzzed. I reached for it instinctively, heart leaping at the idea that maybe it was them. A text, a missed call, anything. But it wasn't that. It was a Facebook notification. My mom had posted a photo, a table covered in snacks. Buffalo wings, chips, and salsa cold beers. The caption read, "Super Bowl Sunday with the best neighbors. Love this crew." I looked at the timestamp. It had gone up just minutes earlier, right as I was taking my place in line. My fingers tightened around the phone until it hurt. I shoved it into my gown pocket and looked straight ahead. I couldn't let my face fall, not now. The music started, and we began to walk. As I stepped forward, I felt like I was splitting in two. One version of me was walking across a stage, hearing my name called, smiling for the camera. The other version was somewhere else, entirely, standing outside a house she didn't live in anymore, watching her parents laugh with people who barely knew her name. The applause when I crossed was polite. No cheers, no shouts. Just Lily and her family were clapping from their seats. I smiled tight and small as the photographer clicked the photo I knew I would never frame. Afterward, mortarboards filled the air. People screamed and hugged, and families rushed forward with bouquets and balloons. I stood still, watching it all unfold like a movie I wasn't cast in. Lily found me, quickly pulled me into her family's pictures, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her dad straightened my honors cords. Her mom wiped a smudge of makeup off my cheek. Someone said we should go out to lunch. I said maybe later. I wandered back toward my apartment alone, still in my gown, still holding the empty ticket holder. I passed groups taking selfies, siblings giving piggyback rides. Moms crying through sunglasses. No one noticed me slipping away. In the quiet of my bedroom, I finally let go. I sat on the floor back against the bed frame and cried into the gown I hadn't wanted to wrinkle. My phone lit up again. Another photo. My mom, with a red plastic cup, raised high arm around a neighbor. The caption said, "This is better than any boring ceremony." That's the moment it cracked. Not the moment they didn't show. Not the walk across the stage alone. But that photo. That sentence. Better than any boring ceremony. Better than me. I turned my phone face down on the carpet. I didn't check it again that day. I couldn't. Because nothing I read could hurt more than what I already knew. 3 days after graduation, my phone rang. It was my dad's number, the first time he'd called directly in months. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering, hoping stupidly that maybe he'd changed his mind. He sounded casual, even cheerful, like nothing had happened. Asked how Seattle was shaping up, if I was getting settled, and if the weather was holding up. I answered with polite small talk, my voice tight from holding back everything I really wanted to say. Then he shifted, said he had something he needed to ask. I already knew it wouldn't be an apology. My chest tightened as he launched into it. "The kitchen flooded," he said. "The plumber found a bunch of issues with the pipes. They needed about $3,000 for repairs." He didn't pause. Just kept going like it was the most natural thing in the world. Said their credit cards were maxed out. Since I was starting that fancy job soon, maybe I could help them out with a loan. Suggested I take out one of those low-interest graduate loans. Promised they'd pay me back eventually. My mouth went dry. I couldn't even form a full sentence. It wasn't just that they'd missed my graduation. It wasn't even the photos of them toasting chips and beer while I stood alone in a crowd. It was their follow-up. "No, how was the ceremony? No, sorry, we missed it. No, we're proud of you. Just money. Always money." I told him I hadn't even started the job yet, that my first paycheck was still weeks away. I had to pay rent, moving costs, and deposits. He barely listened. Said maybe I could use some of that graduation cash from my relatives. That after all they'd done for me, a little help would be the right thing to do. The words sank into me like ice. All they'd done for me. I thought of every skipped ceremony, every forgotten trophy, every time they turned up the TV when I tried to talk about college. I thought of all the meals I bought myself, the jobs I took on to make up for what they couldn't or wouldn't cover. I told him I'd think about it and hung up before he could say more. Then I sat there on the edge of my bed, the silence ringing in my ears. The truth unraveled in front of me slowly and painfully. They didn't see me. They never had. I realized that the version of me they carried in their minds wasn't real. I was a utility. A daughter who worked hard, didn't ask for much, and maybe could send money when things got tight. My milestones weren't celebrated. They were skipped. My struggles weren't witnessed. They were ignored. And still, they felt entitled to ask. Not because they needed help, but because they assumed I wouldn't say no. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, making a list in my head. Every time I'd been expected to show up for them. Every time they hadn't shown up for me. It was long, longer than I wanted to admit. And suddenly, I couldn't keep pretending this was normal. The next morning, I called the campus counseling center. I'd heard seniors got one last month of support. I wasn't sure what I needed. I just knew I needed someone to help me understand why this hurt so much more than I'd let myself feel before. Dr. Ramirez listened carefully as I talked. Then she said something that hit harder than I expected. She told me what I described sounded like emotional neglect. That love without consistency and care leaves wounds even if they're not visible. That setting boundaries wasn't betrayal. It was survival. I walked out of that office with my head spinning. I had always thought loving them meant giving more. But now I wondered if loving myself meant stepping back. Maybe for good. Maybe for now. Either way, something had shifted. The next time my dad's number popped up on my phone, I didn't pick up. I let it ring until the screen went dark. And for the first time, I felt something close to peace. The day I booked my one-way ticket to Seattle, I felt like I was finally breathing again. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just a quiet moment of knowing I was choosing something entirely mine. I emailed my future manager and explained I was available to start earlier than planned. Her response came quickly, warm and encouraging. The company would cover 2 weeks of temporary housing, and they couldn't wait to have me join. I packed my life into 8 cardboard boxes and 2 suitcases. I left behind the town that never felt like home and boarded a plane with no one waving goodbye. Just me and the decision to stop chasing people who wouldn't meet me halfway. Seattle was gray and cool when I landed, the kind of soft weather that wraps around you without demanding anything. The furnished apartment they provided was small, but the view was incredible. Water, sky, city lights, blinking like tiny promises. I unpacked slowly, placing things where I wanted, not where someone told me they should go. I bought a thrifted lamp that cast a warm yellow light, hung up a calendar filled with only my plans. It was the first space that felt like mine from floor to ceiling. The job started smoothly. My team was kind, and the work was challenging in the best way. I wasn't the intern anymore. I was the analyst, the adult, the person with a badge and benefits and meetings that mattered. But the real healing came in the quiet hours outside of work. Jordan from accounting invited me to a weekend farmers market, then a trivia night, then a hiking group. He didn't ask for explanations when I said I didn't talk to my family much. He just listened when I did. My therapist, Dr. Ramirez, connected me to a local support group for first-generation college grads. We met monthly, sharing stories that mirrored mine in ways I didn't expect. For the first time, I said out loud that I wasn't sure my parents loved me in the way I needed. No one flinched. Someone just nodded. I started journaling every night, not about the past, but about what I was building. A home with the chipped mugs I picked out myself. A bookshelf full of both textbooks and thrillers. A Friday night tradition of takeout and silence exactly the way I liked it. I didn't block my parents, but I muted them. I let the texts pile up unread when they came. I responded only when I felt strong enough, and only with what I wanted to share. No more guilt, no more explaining myself to people who never really saw me. One Saturday, I bought a small fern and placed it on the windowsill. I named it something ridiculous and laughed out loud in my kitchen. That laugh felt new. Not loud, not forced, just honest. Choosing myself wasn't one big decision. It was hundreds of small ones. Hanging up before I cried. Turning down a call I knew would hurt. Letting people in who had earned it and closing the door on those who hadn't. Seattle wasn't magic. It didn't fix everything. But it gave me space. Space to stop apologizing for wanting more. Space to remember who I was when no one was watching. And in that space, I started to grow. Not into someone perfect. Not into someone fearless. Just into someone real. Someone is finally free to be her own home. 1 year after graduation, I took a solo trip to Olympic National Park. I didn't invite anyone. Didn't post about it. Didn't ask for advice on what trail to take. I just packed a small backpack, filled my water bottle, and drove. The road curled through dense evergreens and low-hanging clouds. There was something calming about the quiet, the way the fog hugged the hills, like it wasn't trying to prove anything. I parked near a trailhead and started walking slow and steady, no need to rush. Each step felt like part of something bigger. My legs ached in the best way, my breath steady as the trees shifted around me. I thought about who I was last year, numb, trying to smile through tears, waiting for people who never came. Now I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping for a text or refreshing an inbox or looking over my shoulder. I was right here with no one to please but myself. At the overlook, I sat on a mossy rock and pulled out a small notebook. I didn't write anything poetic, just a few lines about how far I'd come, about how it no longer hurts the way it used to. The memories were still there. The missed graduation, the calls that only came when they needed something. But they felt distant now, like old wallpaper under fresh paint. I thought about the friends I'd made, the coworkers who asked how I was really doing, the neighbor who left cookies outside my door when she saw me crying after therapy. These were the people who showed that love didn't have to be earned through suffering. For years, I believed that walking alone meant I was unwanted. It proved that something was broken in me, but now I saw it differently. Walking alone gave me space to become who I really am. It stripped away the noise. It taught me to stop apologizing for wanting care, for needing peace. As the wind picked up, I zipped my jacket and looked out at the valley below. Everything felt quiet, but alive, like the earth was breathing with me. I stood stretched and started the hike back down. Not because I was done, but because I knew where I was going. That night, back in my apartment, I posted a single photo from the hike. A soft view of the trees and fog with my boot just barely in frame. The caption said, "Only this. Sometimes walking alone isn't failure. Sometimes it's how you find your way home."